So, have you ever noticed how your lower back just aches after a long day of, well, doing absolutely nothing but standing up? Or how you can go outside for a couple of hours and end up with sunburns and blisters while literally every other animal seems perfectly content under the sun? What if I told you that your sunburns, your awful sleep schedule, and your random knee pains aren't just bad luck? They might actually be clues to a massive biological mystery. Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to dive into the Human Displacement Hypothesis. It's this incredibly fascinating multidisciplinary report that takes everything we thought we knew about human evolution and turns it completely upside down. It's basically a cosmic detective story, and we are looking right at the evidence. It's a provocative question, isn't it? Are humans actually from Earth? I know, it sounds a little out there at first, but it actually stems from a very real, scientifically observable paradox. If you look around at the incredible terrestrial ecosystem of our planet, nearly every wild animal comes with specialized built-in equipment: fur, scales, ultra-sharp senses, stuff that lets them thrive in their specific niche. And then, well, there's us. Compared to the rest of the animal kingdom, humans seem uniquely fragile. We are constantly at war with the very environment that supposedly forged us. So we're going to unpack the evidence suggesting that our bodies might be, quite literally, out of sync with planet Earth. Okay, let's jump straight into the core premise of this report because it is absolutely fascinating. It calls us glass cannons, and I just love that phrase. It essentially means we exist in a state of constant biological misfit with our habitat. We've got this immense cognitive processing power. Our brains are practically supercomputers. But our physical hardware? It's incredibly fragile and ridiculously high maintenance. Under standard, wild Earth conditions, human bodies just fail. We're going to look at the forensic clues suggesting that we were either transplanted from a totally different environment or radically modified along the way, leaving us fundamentally incompatible with wild nature.
And this brilliantly illustrates our first major anomaly, our skin. Just compare us to, say, a chimpanzee or a wolf. They have dense, dual-layered fur and incredibly high natural UV resistance. Homo sapiens, on the other hand, possess what the report calls paper skin. We traded natural armor for eccrine sweating. Now, sure, sweating is great for long-distance endurance, but it introduces a massive vulnerability to ultraviolet radiation. We literally cannot survive on most of this planet's surface without inventing our own artificial shelter and clothing. I mean, think about it. Why would an organism supposedly evolving on a sun-drenched savanna completely ditch its built-in biological radiation shield?
And the mysteries of our missing defenses don't stop at our skin. The next time you look in the mirror, check out the inner corner of your eye. You'll see this tiny little fold of tissue. It's called the plica semilunaris. Now, in a lot of Earth vertebrates, that is a fully functional nictating membrane, a third eyelid that acts just like a built-in windscreen wiper to clear away dirt and dust. But in humans, it's completely vestigial. We lost it, which completely contradicts the whole idea that we were optimized for dusty, windswept African savannas. Instead, it strongly implies our underlying design comes from an environment completely free of harsh, blowing debris. Now, what's really interesting about this next point is that the mismatch goes way beyond the sun and the wind. It's actually woven into the fabric of gravity itself. Earth's gravitational constant is roughly 9.81 meters per second squared. And honestly, our upright, bipedal architecture is actively being crushed by it. While four-legged mammals glide around with incredible grace and durability, we are stuck in a constant losing battle against the downward pull of the very rock we supposedly evolved to conquer. Just look at the staggering structural failures of walking on two legs. To balance upright, our spine had to develop this patchwork, S-curved shape that is just begging for slipped discs and hernias. In fact, anthropologists point out that our skeletal frame was really only designed to last about 20 to 40 years before major orthopedic degradation kicks in, which, anyone over 30 can probably validate. Add to that our circulatory system. It struggles so hard to pump blood vertically against Earth's gravity that humans uniquely suffer from venous hypertension, meaning things like varicose veins and hemorrhoids. These are purely distinctly human problems that barely even exist in the wild animal kingdom.
But if we want to talk about the most severe mechanical failure of our bipedal design, we have to look at how we bring new life into the world. The report highlights the obstetrical dilemma. This is the evolutionary conflict between needing a narrowed pelvis to walk upright and needing a massive cranium for our huge brains. In almost every other mammalian species, birth is a pretty safe, unassisted event. Take macaques, for example. They have a similarly tight birth canal, but their deliveries are generally quick and intuitive. Human birth, by stark contrast, is a uniquely life-threatening trauma.
The historical data here is actually really sobering. Before modern medicine, up to 15% of human infants did not survive the birthing process, not to mention terrifyingly high maternal mortality rates. And because our heads are so large, human babies have to be born completely unfinished, a state biologists call secondary ultracelia. We are born essentially helpless, requiring years of intense protection. Compare that to a baby giraffe that is quite literally up and walking in an hour. It's a reproductive crisis that begs the question, was our system actually adapted for a world with a much lower gravitational cost? So our bones and biology are mismatched. But it gets even weirder, because the anomalies actually extend deep into our internal clocks. This is chronobiology, and it is a massive piece of the puzzle. Back in the day, a French geologist named Michel Siffre went into a deep cave completely isolated from sunlight to see what his body would do. Without the sun, his natural sleep cycle drifted to a 25-hour day. Years later, Harvard researchers tried to counter this with highly controlled lab studies, perfectly managing light exposure down to the minute. And the result? The human biological clock actually runs on a strict cycle of exactly 24 hours and 11 minutes. Do you see the issue here? Even at its absolute most precise, our internal clock stubbornly refuses to perfectly match Earth's 24-hour rotation. And if we dig into our DNA, the plot thickens. We see this bizarre history of sudden genetic leaps paired with inexplicable sensory decay. For instance, we possess orphan genes. These are genes that just sort of appear with no clear evolutionary ancestors, and they're what drive our high-level unique cognition. But at the exact same time, we lost crucial terrestrial survival traits. We suddenly lost the ability to naturally synthesize vitamin C, making us uniquely vulnerable to scurvy. Our olfactory bulb shrank drastically, meaning our sense of smell is terrible compared to a dog's. And our vomeronasal organ, which detects pheromones, became totally vestigial. It's as if our ancestors were suddenly placed in a protected, dimmed environment where those survival tools just weren't needed anymore. So the crucial point is, how did we survive losing all those physical capabilities? The answer actually lies in our guts, which shrank by up to 25% compared to other primates. This ties into the cooking hypothesis. We basically diverted our metabolic energy away from digestion and funneled it straight into our massive brains. But there was a staggering trade-off. If we tried to eat raw wild food the way other primates do, we would have to spend 42% of our waking hours doing nothing but chewing. Instead, we became biologically dependent on an external chemical process, fire, just to digest our food and survive. Which brings us to a really profound twist in how we view human achievement. The report brings up the artificial ape theory, which states, technology is not an extra, it is a substitute for a missing habitat. We always tend to look at our clothes, our air conditioning, our sturdy houses as signs that humanity conquered the Earth. But this explainer suggests a totally different reality. We are actually desperately simulating a lost environment. We're essentially indoor organisms forced to carry an artificial bubble around with us just to survive a weekend out on a wild planet. Okay, let's move to the next phase and see how this all builds together. If we take all these weird puzzle pieces, our fragile skin, our failing backs, our out-of-sync clocks, and we reverse engineer them, what does our true home actually look like? What are the specifications of the planet our bodies were designed for? Let's do a rapid-fire forensic synthesis of humanity's hypothetical homeworld. First up, gravity. Based on the mechanical load that constantly crushes our spines and causes our veins to fail, we are definitely looking for a much lighter world. An environment with a gravitational pull around 0.8 g, so about 80% of Earth's gravity, would finally allow our bipedal skeleton and our vascular systems to function perfectly. It would mean living a life completely without the constant mechanical failure and the chronic pain that plagues half the human population. Next, let's look at the climate. Humans have an incredibly narrow temperature tolerance compared to wild animals. We are really only optimized for a stable, constant climate of roughly 24 degrees Celsius or 75 degrees Fahrenheit. We'd thrive in an environment completely devoid of Earth's volatile weather, shifting seasons, and extreme humidity drops. In other words, our biology expects the entire outside world to feel exactly like a perfectly climate-controlled living room. Then there is the sun. Remember that paper-thin skin we talked about and our extreme vulnerability to UV radiation? That strongly points to a homeworld shielded from high-intensity solar output. This implies a planet with incredibly thick, reflective cloud cover, or more likely, a world orbiting a K-type or M-type red dwarf star. A dimmer, low UV sun would completely explain why we possess absolutely no natural biological radiation shields, and why a simple day at the beach leaves us so painfully blistered. Finally, to cure our constant circadian asynchrony, this hypothetical planet would need a slightly longer rotation. A day length of around 24.5 to 25 hours would perfectly align with our endogenous, free-running rhythm. On this world, your biological clock would naturally sync up with the sunrise. No more sleep deprivation, absolutely no need for harsh alarm clocks, and a complete biological cure for those universal Monday morning blues. So, how exactly did a creature built for a dim, low-gravity 25-hour world end up roaming the Earth? The report impartially outlines several intervention theories to explain this. First is the exile hypothesis, which suggests Earth basically functions as a cosmic quarantine, a prison planet meant to sequester a high-performance aggressive species. Then there's the DNA hacking theory. This proposes we are the result of a rushed, mismatched genetic upgrade of a native hominid. Like, we traded physical toughness for cognitive power so rapidly that our hardware couldn't catch up. And lastly, the crypto-terrestrial connection, which points to historical accounts of external monitoring and modification by advanced, hidden entities. Ultimately, the human displacement hypothesis forces us to look in the mirror and ask a deeply unsettling question. Are we exiles stranded on a prison planet? Or are we hyper-modified organisms running on the wrong operating system? The next time your back aches from simply standing in line or your alarm clock forcefully jolts you out of a 25-hour sleep rhythm, you really have to wonder, is your body failing you? Or is it just accurately reporting its total incompatibility with a wild alien world it was never meant to call home? It's a profound mystery, and one that invites us to question absolutely everything we know about our own biology. Thanks for exploring this with us.